What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. I decided, sort of as an art challenge, to try to create 100 paintings for finally reaching the 100 subscribers milestone.
Yay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where this is going to go, but I'm encouraged to keep going with it, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you. So I'm just going to create 100 paintings, small paintings, over the next few weeks, and share those with you guys, and just see what comes of it. So I thought to myself, how am I going to do this, right? How am I going to make 100 paintings, even small ones, in a fairly short amount of time? And I decided to try doing them all on one big piece of paper. So I just taped a big piece of paper up to the wall and started to grid it off into squares. I chose to go with 5-inch by 5-inch squares and just see how many I could fit onto the paper. All right, so that's how this ended up looking, and this is a really fun stage because you got all these little empty canvases ready to be filled in. So I'm going to start drawing here, and this is probably my favorite part of this whole process. Just being relaxed and starting to draw and not really having too much of a plan. I wanted to start by maybe using each of these squares to create faces, uh, individual faces that are similar to sort of the abstract faces that I've been doing in larger paintings. And that was fairly successful, but at a certain point, I kind of got ran out of ideas, I guess, for the faces. I started to break these down into more just abstract elements and geometric patterns, and that was actually really fun. I feel like I probably don't do this enough, where I just don't really have much of a plan. I just doodle and draw and goof around and really see where things can go without having too much thought. And I guess a better way to say that is just intuitively drawing and relaxing and um, seeing where I can go creatively without thinking too much. So yeah, here's just a quick scan looking over each of these to see how they turned out, and I was pretty happy with them. There are a few that were not as strong as others, but I thought it was a good start. Personally, I feel like I have to stop myself from judging myself. Please allow myself to not judge myself so harshly and just have fun with this stuff. I wanted to say that as I'm looking at these things during this process, I'm already starting to think about color and how I might apply color to some of these shapes. But before I can start painting, I need to mask off the grid. So I'm going to apply some fluid art mask in between each of the squares so that hopefully in the end I can easily remove that and leave nice clean edges on all the little paintings. That step took a little longer than I expected, but it worked out pretty well. And once that was dry, I was able to jump right into painting each of the individual squares. If you've been watching some of my previous videos, you've probably noticed that I'm a little bit obsessed with the Zorn palette, and I couldn't resist starting with the Zorn palette to lay down some initial color for at least the left side of this set of paintings. So people often ask me how I choose my colors and what my thought processes are, and I probably should think about this a little more and give a more thoughtful answer. The reality is I just use my instincts, and I think that I will say I quite often find myself looking for contrast, looking for contrasting complementary colors, but I really don't think about it too much. I just take a color, move around the artwork, and for some reason I just have an instinct for where I think the color should go. Doesn't make it right or wrong. Uh, Other people might completely disagree with my approach to color. It seems to work for me, and at the end of the day, I'm still trying to figure it out. So you got to just go with your gut and throw down the color and see where it leads. So I've sped up this next bit quite a lot just because it took quite a long time, and I actually filmed this over several days and filmed pretty much every step of the process. So this tip that I'm about to give you may not really work for certain types of painting like watercolor, but I will say for acrylic painting, one of the best tips I've received is just cover the entire surface with at least one thin layer of paint before you go getting into any details. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm basically going around filling in every single space with a color, just getting something down on the paper. As always, with acrylic paint especially, you can cover it up, you can change the color at any time, you can start over completely if you really need to. It seals in very quickly. Within a few minutes you can actually cover it. So I find, especially with abstract painting, that just lets me relax and let go. I don't have to worry about being too precious or too careful. I can just have fun and take some chances and experiment and play, and that really suits me. So here's what that first pass looks like. And it may not look like much, but this is kind of what you expect after the first pass. So they look a little fuzzy and a little flat at this point, but this next step is going to fix all that. So I think I said the drawing part might be my favorite, but I may be wrong. This is probably the most satisfying part of all. Starting to go in with line work and create contrast, even more contrast between each of the shapes is really fun. And that's where I feel like, at least with the type of painting I do, that everything starts to come together. So I mix up some darker colors and essentially just move over the entire piece, each individual painting with a contrasting darker color, sometimes black, but not always. And with this step, I'm just trying to create more definition and separation between each of the shapes and elements and really unify each individual piece. And after going over the entire piece with darker colors, I come back with a lighter color. And in this case, I'm using a palette knife to apply the line work. And I wanted to show this in real time, somewhat real time, because you can get really clean, sharp lines with palette knife, and it's a really great tool to play with. So yeah, I just go over the entire piece again with the palette knife and with a small brush, and using different lighter colors to create more texture and contrast and interest, and try to really bring out, and in this case, the emotions of some of these pieces. I feel like, that this is a really crucial step for the type of painting that I do. So the whole time I've been working on this piece, I've been looking at this fluid mask and wondering if it's been on too long and how it's going to come off. And thankfully, it peeled off very nicely. It was actually pretty satisfying. It's a very rubbery substance, and it comes off pretty easy. So after I got all of the fluid masking off, I signed each of the pieces individually, and then I hit them with an isolation coat, which is an acrylic sealer. And then on top of that, I used a satin varnish to put an even more protective layer on top. So once the varnish was dry, it was okay to take down the entire piece. And this next step is a really important step for anyone who paints on paper. This Strathmore paper is really thick and durable. The acrylic paint does tend to buckle it a little bit, and so I usually hit the back of my paper paintings with um, a mixture of water and gesso, just a thin coat, to help counteract or counterbalance that buckling that happens from the paint. All right, so before I cut these into individual pieces, this is sort of an overview of how everything looks. Yeah, it was pretty satisfying. It's pretty fun. I was pretty happy with where I ended up, and I think these are pretty cool as individual pieces. So, all right, one last step. Here we go. And all I'm going to say about this is if you guys are using X-Acto knives, they're great tools, but just be careful with them. Super sharp, not a toy. I paused here because these ended up looking pretty cool just as strips, so I may explore doing something like that in the future. So I only made it through 30 paintings on my initial start here at 100 paintings. All of these are going to be available at some point on my Etsy shop if anyone wants one of these. I'm going to make them affordable with a coupon so that you can get them pretty cheaply if you like. All right, that's it for this one. Thanks again, everybody who subscribed. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited about the next step in this process. I'm going to try to finish up the next 70 paintings for my 100 painting challenge, and I'm going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to put more imagination into it, and I think that the next one will be a lot of fun. So if you like this kind of stuff, stay tuned.